It's not about what you have, it's about who you have. It's not about where you live, it's about how you live. And it's not about what you do, it's about why you do it. Welcome to the Momentasize podcast. Today I have got an extremely special guest for us. Somebody who's a Central Oregon native, born and raised Central Oregon, but then has gone on to do some pretty wild things, including a 10-year stint as a professional wakeboarder and now a global businessman that's doing over $2 billion of sales. Without further ado, please help me welcome Charley Patterson to the podcast.
Thanks, Dirk. Really excited to be here.
Thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. I got to ask you a quick question. What's the craziest wipeout you've ever done on a wakeboard?
So getting ready for the Pro Wakeboard Tour, the first event in Orlando of the season back in 2000, the event was an obstacle-only event. So the boat was pulling us at OWC with obstacles set all over the lake, which normally is a mix. So we would do wake tricks and then we would hit obstacles as well. This event was only obstacles.
Yeah.
So we went and did our practice run on the Friday for the competition on Saturday. I was training at my lake at home with Kobe Minkasich. It was the first pro I ever saw and lived with for many years and trained with. We were hitting this rail that we had been hitting probably 1,000 times, over the winter and getting prepared for the tour. I got onboarded onto the rail, which is a gap. So there was about, 10, 12 foot gap, and it was a 10-inch PVC pipe. I onboarded and it was really rough where I was, and I kind of looped out. So I flipped up, flying through the air, like parallel with my board, over the gap and hit the oncoming 10-inch PVC pipe with my groin.
With your groin.
And my core. And immediately stopped 22 miles an hour to dead stop, and was bleeding, was cut. Was very concerned about what part of my body was cut.
How close was it? How close was it?
It was close.
Inches.
Very, very close. Very
Inches.
close. And to which I asked Kobe, you gotta look for me.
Yeah.
He pulled me up on the back of the boat and he checked. And he said, "You're still a man. You're still okay."
Yeah.
But that was the craziest accident that I've ever had, because it tore my abdomen, it tore my stomach, my core, and everything else was thankfully safe. But I have a giant scar on my leg that I tell my kids that I was attacked by an alligator.
Yeah, there you go. I like it. So it turned into a good story for your children. And thank goodness it didn't actually get your man parts, because one of the things I love about you and one of the things we connect on is how much you value being a dad. Can you just give us a little background? It's pretty cool. Charley's got 5 children and 4 of those 5 are quadruplets.
Yeah. So I have 5 kids.
Yeah.
That happened in 2 births, and they have 1 birthday.
Yeah.
So on our oldest daughter, Charlie Rose's 3rd birthday, we birthed 4 additional children at one time. Hemi, which is my wife's last name, Sunny, which is my wife's nickname, Jagger, and Rocket.
Just like that. So on your first daughter's 3rd birthday, you then now also had 4 new children come out. What are the chances of that? It's just meant to be one of those. You're probably pinching yourself on the things like that, huh?
We definitely saw divine God's work, and it was a very scary process. We did not do IVF. This was just again an act of God. We went in to get tested that we were pregnant. Confirmed that we were pregnant, and they, we saw the ultrasound, the woman doing the ultrasound, the doctor, have a reaction. And it wasn't the first time we'd seen a reaction like this, because earlier in the year we were pregnant. And when we went to confirm the sex of the child, we found out that our son Holden, was a boy, was terminal, and he was missing kidneys. He had a heart that wasn't fully functional, and he had some other issues that were connected. And so we went through 6 weeks of continuing to carry him, from about 16 weeks to 22 weeks before we released him, because he would have no quality of life. He would not be able to make amniotic fluid because he had no kidneys. And so going through that process, when we saw the doctor's reaction, and we saw the doctor react to this new, ultrasound, we were concerned again, because we were told that this was a fluke one of the time thing, mommy and daddy's genes just came together weird. And so Holden was terminal. And we chose to see it that this is happening for us. This is on the way. We don't know why it's happening, although we know it's very common, these miscarriages or challenges in the pregnancy. Yeah, we chose to see it, that it was happening for us, not to us.
Yeah.
And then when we saw the doctor have that reaction, my wife squeezes my hand, and we asked, like, is everything okay? She says, yeah, I just need a minute.
Yep.
And so as she's going through things, and she says, okay, here you have a sac with a yolk. You have a second sac with a yolk. Here's a third sac with a yolk, which I was clear. Okay, that must be a baby. I must misunderstand because there's no way that we have 3 babies in there.
Yeah, it was like different pictures of the sack with the yolk, not 3 babies. Yeah,
right. I'm like, so okay, this is new language. And then here's a sack with no yolk. So you're pregnant with 3 babies, possibly 4, yet you're not able to have 4. You can have 2, not 4. That's how she informed us that we were pregnant, and then had us go to a specialist the next week, which we then led us to another specialist, and we saw 3 doctors in a row that told us that we had to abort 2 of the babies, or reduce to 2 babies, or that we couldn't do 4 babies and we could only do 2. I mean, this is their exact language.
That was the advice. It was like, you cannot do 4. So what'd you do about it?
So we prayed, and we just said, hey, like we believe that we were given 4 babies on purpose. This was not our work. We didn't set out intentionally for this to happen. Yet we believe that this was part of our journey and our plan, regardless of what the outcome was, because the statistics they gave us were that it was an 80% likelihood that I would raise these kids by myself for their entire life. They would never leave home.
Meaning that, they wouldn't be able to leave home because of just the development. They weren't going to be able to develop properly in the process.
Correct. Okay. Yeah, they would be born with issues, limiting issues, and that my wife, because the immense impact on internal organs from multiples, is that every one beyond 1 has a greater effect on the human body and the organs. And so my wife would have a shortening of life if she made it through the pregnancy. That's what they told us. And so it was very, very fear-based. My wife, we're not fear-based people.
Yeah, I can tell.
We're faithful, and we see a greater plan with everything that happens in our lives. And so we chose to move forward no matter what the outcome was. Now, that was a process, for sure. And once we made the decision, and then my wife had a vision of all 4 of those little kids playing with their sister and us in the water on a lake. This is the vision she had, that was evidence to her that we were to move forward. After that, we intentionally set out to find a doctor that would take us. And we found a gentleman named Dr. Tabish at UCLA, Santa Monica. And my wife became his favorite patient and successfully delivered 4 healthy babies on their sister's older birthday on January 6, 2018.
Yeah, if you don't believe in miracles, then now you can, and they're not just 4 babies, they're some of the cutest ones I've ever seen. I remember I came to your house, beautiful house, and we were having our first kid, and you were graciously giving us your car seats. I think your kids had just grown out of them, and because you have quadruples, you got 4 of everything. So you're like, hey, we're good. We can hand these down. And I remember pulling into your driveway, beautiful home, big glass door. And the kids were in the house, and you and I were chatting, and all of a sudden one really cute little kid, like it must have been 2 or 3, comes up to the glass door and they're like, hey, Dad. And then the 3 other kids sort of get the wind that it's happening. So next thing you know, I got another one. So then there's 4 of the cutest little kids just waving at their dada, healthy as can be. And it's a scene I won't forget. It was a memorable thing. So congratulations on that miracle, and just believing. I think that it's so rare because there is so much fear out there. You think about even what just happened. The whole world just got pushed through a crazy situation of fear with COVID. I mean, that was a wild social experiment. And a lot of people let fear drive their decisions, but you guys let fate drive your decisions. And so I commend you for that. And I think that that's a beautiful, beautiful thing and now looking back, of course, that was the answer, right? All these doctors were saying you couldn't do it. Your wife had that vision. What a beautiful thing. And you just stuck with your faith. And it's a beautiful story. So thanks for sharing that. I want to pivot a little bit, and that's a beautiful story. And thank you for sharing it. But I want to pivot to, you've got 5 kids and you've got this huge business as well that you've been able to build over time. Let's dive a little bit into that business. What is it like having that family that you're growing, and then also having this business that's grown, but now you're also going to blow up, from what I hear?
Yes, sir. So as I had an incredible journey as a professional wakeboarder and being one of the pioneers of the sport, first generation, from the early 90s into the early 2000s. And I woke up one morning, put my feet down on the ground, and the inspiration that I had been operating from, that I'd been living from for over a decade, and really through my whole childhood on Lake Billy Chinook here, that it was just gone. I mean, out of nowhere.
What you'd worked on forever was just boom.
The fire inside, the inspiration that I had for this entire time was gone. I looked out at the lake that I was living on in Orlando, Florida, and I never wanted to do it again. And it was unforeseen. The night before, totally normal, had a game plan. I had contracts with about 26 different sponsors that would last another 2 or 3 years. But the vision that I had for me in the sport and the excitement for the sport, that was gone.
The energy. Yeah, the energy. What do you think it was?
I just think that it was time for me to move on. I again, just being a man of faith, like I've seen a plan in my life that every single time that I lacked vision for something, it was not going to be a part of my future. And that was what happened, that I had no vision of the future. And I believed that this meant that it was time for me to move on into the next chapter of my life. And so I had fear came over me, but it was a new fear. It wasn't like a physical fear that had resulted from all the injuries that I had in the sport. It was a fear of the future. It was a fear of the incredible lifestyle that I had grown fond of and accustomed to as a professional athlete. I was fortunate to be one of the top income earners in the sport. And what came with that is like the realization that when I stop, my income is going to stop. One of my mentors in the space, a guy named Carl Roberge, one of the world top water skiers in his time, recommended that I read a book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah, the OG.
Incredible book. I recommend everyone reads it to understand, the cash flow quadrant and linear income that is an employee, a small business, or self-employed. And I was self-employed, an independent contractor as a professional athlete. So it's linear income. So it doesn't matter if your income's here or here or here, that when you stop, that income stops.
Done.
And I didn't know anything about linear income until I read this book. And that was when I realized I had linear income, and that when I stopped, my sponsors were going to stop paying me, which in my early 30s, recognizing that my contracts would take me 34, 35 years old, I would now be starting late into the grown-up world. Yeah. Right. I mean,
out of the athlete world. Now you're into like the grown up business world where it's a whole different ball game.
And scary because, at the time when I left University of Oregon going into my senior year to wakeboard, and I had great results in the sport. And so I was making, out of all my friends that I was going to college with, I was making the most money. Yeah. And they're just starting their careers. Well, now they're 10, 15 years into their careers, having developed that foundation. And now I'm pushing the reset button and starting over.
Yeah, from the beginning.
And my resume is just as a professional athlete, a professional wakeboarder.
Yeah.
And so, hey, I'm a really hard worker. I'm really disciplined and I'm driven and I will underpromise and overproduce. Yet, and I'm coachable. I'm willing to be taught. Yet I need to start at this income.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people, an income that people are going to laugh at and say, yeah, there's no way we're going to pay you that to start and you to learn. So I realized, okay, first of all, I want to be on the other side of the cash flow quadrant with big business and investing. So I could develop leverage. I could develop an asset that I could give blood, sweat, and tears to, like I did wakeboarding. I didn't need a day off from my sport. Like my sport was a vacation and it was never work because I loved it so much.
Yeah.
I mean, it oozed from me. It came from me.
Yeah, Pat, you were passionate about it. I mean, you just projected passion. So it was never work. It was just constantly pushing.
So why do you don't need a day off from that?
You don't need
right?
it. Exactly.
Yet, what if in the future a time comes that I don't want to do what I'm doing like I'm in the situation now? I want it to be leveraged. So if I take my foot off the gas and redirect my attention, my income isn't going to suffer. And so I went looking for that because I realized I'm unemployable. I've never had a job other than being an athlete. I've never had a boss. I've never had employees.
Yeah.
And I am not, I have CI.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys have talked about CI here before.
No, we haven't.
When I have control issues.
Yeah.
And when someone tells me what to do that I don't respect, it's more like the Incredible Hulk reaction.
Yeah, that's what comes out. Huh?
Right? Like I'm allergic to someone telling me what to do.
Yeah.
So I realized I'm unemployable. I studied to be a doctor at the University of Oregon. I was pre-med until I had no vision for that and had conversations with doctors to find out if they had the lifestyle that I wanted, which they didn't. And so we both agreed I should go do something else, not be a doctor, which led me to the search that led me to wakeboarding. Yet, so I was confident that if I opened myself up and was looking and searching, the quality of the questions that I asked and the quality of what I looked for would lead me to that equal quality. And I wanted leveraged income. I wanted to build an asset that could reward me not only for the rest of my life, be able to be passed on to future generations. So thus, that was what I found. And in January of 2004 in Utah, I was introduced to a man who had, made over 100 million with the company, and he knew my situation. He was also a retired athlete at the collegiate level. And he just said, Charley, if you're coachable, you're willing to change, you're willing to invest in yourself, I will invest in you and I will teach you. And that man not only became my mentor, which was one of the most respected in our company and the entire industry, that he became my second father and a part of every area of my life, including my marriage and the journey of birthing those kids.
Boom. So just like that, when you were making that transition, you looked at it, you talked to your mentors. I think one of the key things, like in any pivotal moment that happens, we were talking about this offline as well, it's the relationships. You're one relationship away from changing your entire trajectory, changing your entire life, just like that man you met. And you didn't even know that man existed. You just had to first, you knew that wakeboarding wasn't going to be what you wanted to do anymore. There was a moment that just happened. You said you didn't have vision for it anymore. And so then the next thing was getting clear on what's next. And although you didn't know the exact answer of what it was going to be, you knew the framework. You studied, you asked the mentor what to do, you read the book, you studied, you got clarity on what you wanted. And the way the universe works is if you're clear and you ask and you stay open, the universe will provide what you need. And in came that relationship that changed your whole life. That's a beautiful story. One thing I wanted to touch on, because I wasn't at your level, but I was a soccer player, collegiate soccer player. My whole life was always soccer. That's all I thought about, wanted to do. That was my life. Like if you ask me what I want to do, that's all I wanted to do. And then, as you go through that, I played at a good high level collegiate soccer. But the reality for me, unlike you where you went professional, was I just wasn't good enough to go to the next level. So I had to make a decision. Either I could go try to play at the second league USL, not make so much money. My worry was I was going to get spit out, or I just hang up my boots at that time. And when I hung up my boots, one thing that I struggled with for a while, a couple of years, was that identity crisis. All I identified as was a soccer player. I got all my passion, everything I needed to have a fulfilling life out of being a soccer player. And then when that was gone, there was like a 2-year period where I felt a little bit lost. Did you struggle with that when you gave up wakeboarding, or how did that unfold? What happened with your identity?
I love this question, Dirk. It's a common conversation. Having married a professional athlete, and then I leave here and I'm headed to Boss Fitness and Performance to work out with friends, Tim Baggs, who we talked about earlier, and then a bunch of pro athletes. And we all talk about this, those that are either in transition or have gone through the transition, because it can be very dark. As you described, it's, who am I? Identity issues, right? And it's what I found in that transition. How I successfully transitioned was moving into something that I had vision for and intention, which my intention on the success that I desired and having a clear blueprint, in your language, or roadmap, that I was able to put that same energy, right? My intention was that direction, which got my attention and my energy, that I had that shift. And I was able to bridge that transition successfully. So I didn't go through the depression or the addictions or the all of the other list of issues that happen for many athletes in a transition. Yeah. And not that I haven't gone through those things in other times, yet during that window, I found a successful path to transition, and realizing that my identity I'm not a wakeboarder. I'm Charley Patterson. Yeah. And how I show up through every area of my life is my identity, not what I do. And that helped me then, when the success that I then had with my following career for the last 20 years, and meeting my wife as a result, who intentionally, I set my intention to meet my wife, and had a blueprint, a roadmap to actually achieve that.
Yeah.
That when I met her and I knew she was my wife, right? Which I set a goal to meet my wife in 90 days. And then 30 days into that, I was challenged by my 5 coaches, blindly asked me, "Are you open to a challenge?" And I said, I am. And they said, "Meet your wife in 24 hours. To which I met her 8 to 12 hours later. And she had, a few years into our relationship, I believe it was just after we got married, so 20 months later, she decided that it was her time to stop wrestling in the ring because she herniated 3 discs in her neck. And we want to have kids, we wanted to have a family, and we believe that, fusion of her neck, which was required to continue to wrestle, and all of, the drugs and everything else that goes along with that, we believe that was not part of our plan. Yeah. So she retired out of the ring. And because I had successfully navigated that transition, I had helped other pro athletes successfully make that transition, that I was able to do the same thing with my wife and guide her as she was open and she was coachable. And so she too avoided all of those things that can and very likely happen when people are in that transition.
Yeah, I love it. I love what you said there. Napoleon Hill, who's one of my favorite thought leaders. It's wild when you study somebody who was so far ahead of his time. If you read all of his literature, he was talking about and predicting things that came true 100 years later. It's just a beautiful thing. But he says what the mind can conceive and the heart, what the mind can conceive and the heart can, I'm butchering it. What the mind can conceive and the heart can feel, you can achieve. Something like that. I butchered it, but you are like a walking example of that, right? You set your intentions and then you made it happen. So what your mind can believe and come up with, and then you align your action. You can't just say it. The thing is, you can't just say it and then not align massive action with it. You have to align that massive action and be willing to put the work in to make it happen. But you really can have the life of your dreams. And you're an example of that unfolding in your relationship, in your career. And it's really cool to be able to touch base and hear those pieces. I really, really like it. So you didn't have an identity issue. What about adrenaline though? If you're wakeboarding and you're doing that stuff, your adrenaline and your flow state's gotta be just wild. How did you pivot from, sure, not an identity crisis, but how'd you get your adrenaline fix.
Well, there was an identity crisis,
Yeah.
Dirk, and that's so I do relate with everything that you described in yours. I was able to transition successfully through that period. I think it was just shorter. Not
You
that
bridged it. You were able to bridge it and stay
correct,
exactly. Yeah.
faster, and to be able to see and to have awareness on it, so then I could speak to it with other people going through it. That there was, Zach Sudfeld, a very close friend here from Boss Fitness as well. When I met him, and he's in early 30s, just released from the NFL, and our first conversation as two athletes, we immediately bonded and connected because I assumed that his feelings and where he was, that he was having identity issues. And so we started talking about it, and he's just a really transparent man. Yeah. And he immediately was just like, we connected, and because there was relationship, there was relatability, right, for it. So, the books you reference with, Think and Grow Rich and Outwitting the Devil, two of my favorite books. And it is, I have the same reaction. Like, this is written over 100 years ago, and it is applicable, relevant today, still as
more than ever, almost. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Depending on where you are in your journey, yes, more than ever. And so, especially with all those things that can happen in those transitions we talk about in addictions that he speaks to in Outwitting the Devil. So, when I look at that, it's all had a profound effect on my life in understanding, to your question, the adrenaline and my energy, that when I have vision for something, and only when I have vision for something do I move forward on it. If I lack vision, then I've learned that it's not in my future, as I spoke to a moment ago. So, for example, when I was standing, one of my fellow professional wakeboarders, a guy named Nick Weinecker, was marrying Sonia Weinecker, another professional wakeboarder, number 2 female in the world to ever ride professionally. Standing there in the wedding, not part of the wedding, but in the audience with my current girlfriend. Sonia's walking down the aisle, and I do not have any vision. In that moment, I'm not able to see the current girlfriend that I was with. She's an amazing human. Yeah. Her name's Mia, still close. My wife's friends with her. Like, we love her. Yet I could not see her in my future. I had no vision for her walking down the aisle to me. And I knew, as a result of that, she wasn't in my future as my wife. So the question I asked, why am I staying in this relationship? I'm wasting her time and wasting my time because I have no vision for her in my life. The same as I lacked vision for wakeboarding being in my future when I woke up that morning in January of 2004. So when I have vision for something, like I caught for my new business, or I found when I met my wife, or my wife had the vision for the kids, same situations, there's immediate intention that goes to that with asking the questions, right? How is this going to happen? Which there's infinite ways that it'll happen. I believe I've heard you spoken about this as well, right? In your podcast. And so as that intention is set, then the attention goes in the direction where then the energy follows. And that is the massive action that has to go to fulfill that vision. And that is where I get the adrenaline from. So when I have vision for something, I love the work to do it.
Yeah. Because you have the vision, ties back, like you said, when you did have the vision for wakeboarding and you pivoted out from being a doctor and you went into the wakeboarding, you had a vision for that. And so it did not feel like work. You were able to bring all the energy, become the best because it did not feel like work. It aligned, your vision aligned. And so therefore you could bring the energy to make it happen. So your adrenaline comes from being able to tap into that vision, which comes at different times through different experiences, then set your attention around it. And then your energy, your adrenaline comes from then putting the massive action behind the energy to bring that vision to life. That's a beautiful thing. I actually that's really, really well said. And I think a lot of people, we have those visions, we have those moments. We're sitting there, for example, sitting next to a great person, our girlfriend, and walking down the aisle and asking ourselves, hey, could I ever see myself marrying this girl? And the answer would be, they might be having that same vision, and the answer would be, no, I can't. But then we don't act on the vision because it's not convenient, it's not comfortable, it's a big pivot, and then you just almost forget. You let go of the vision and you just continue on, right? And that will lead to either a mediocre life where you never go after your visions that you're having. And the vision, what I think is wild, The Alchemist talks about this too. If you don't listen to the vision or the omen, whichever one you want to call it, and you don't listen to that omen or vision that comes and don't act on it, then it'll get quieter and quieter and quieter, and you won't be able to hear it as much, right? And so I think that one thing that happens, and I've been in it myself, is I've had very similar experiences to what you said exactly there, and I've chosen to ignore that vision or chosen to not do anything about it, even though I know it's not aligning with what I really want. And I would challenge everybody, the quicker you can identify and then take massive action to adjust and change, the closer you will get to living your dream life, just like you're doing today. I mean, it's a really, really cool piece of advice that I really love. So we touched base on, you pivoted, you met a mentor, right? And I think for anyone that's struggling, get clear, just like Charley laid out, get clear on what you want. And then you never know what's going to happen. So put yourself in the situations to meet new people, because Charley met a mentor who done 100 million in this new skin. And all of a sudden, the next thing you know, it completely changed the trajectory of your shift, right? So you met that one person. Talk to us about, you met him in new skin, and then it's been a 20-year journey since then. Talk to us a little bit about that, and we'll go from there.
You've been hitting on this entire conversation, and when I have a vision for something, and it's every time in my life when I've had a vision, it's from point A to point B. So my point A is right where I'm at, and I see a very straight line, a very clear path to the point B on what it is that I have vision for, or the outcome that I desire. Not one time in my life has it been a straight line. Yet when I started and I had the vision, it was a straight line. I saw a path. Yeah. It never happened the way I initially saw. Right?
That's
but
cool,
the outcome still happened. It just didn't happen the way I initially did. I believe it's important in two ways. One is that it got me moving and taking action. Like I took action because I had that vision and I saw a path. I was able to make a decision because of that vision. And I love talking about the word decide. Because when you break down decision to decide, DE means to cut off, to sever. Side is death, suicide, pesticide, homicide, herbicide, genocide, all death. To decide is to cut off all other options, death to any other option than this path, than this vision. And when we make a decision that providence moves to, and all sorts of unforeseen events, circumstances, people come his or her way in support of that decision. So when I've made a decision every single time in my life, whether it was athletics, business, romance, whatever it is, relationships, that individuals appeared in my life in support of that decision. The very best in the world at what it was that I desired to do showed up in my life. And so as Nathan Ricks is his name, showed up in my life, I went back to, the several different, pieces of my journey before that were successful, which was my dad guided me to go sit down with those doctors. To find out if that career had what I wanted. And this is a space that I believe that the majority of the population does not do. They do not take this action, is to go have a conversation with the very best at what they are thinking about doing, to find out if the outcome is what they desire. Because my experience in talking with people is that they go down this journey of 10, 20, 30 years, and the outcome that they have is not what they wanted. Yet they never asked if actually what they wanted was achievable by doing what they're doing. So when I sat down with Nathan, I had conversation with him about his life, about his lifestyle, about does he have leverage, which is what I wanted. Is he over here in the big business and investing cash flow quadrant, which was new and relevant to me and still is, yet that was new to me at that time, was on my radar. And he had everything that I wanted, right? Just like the pro athletes that I met, that when I caught a vision, I saw wakeboarding for the first time in my life. It was, I had no vision for being a doctor, was looking, what was it going to be? That was my next chapter. I see this pro wakeboarder, Kobe Mikasich, ride, blew my mind. Like every hair on my body standing up, like goosebumps everywhere. And right then I knew I had to learn to wakeboard and become a pro wakeboarder. I made the decision, declared it to my family, declared it to my friends, declared it to my coach at U of O, declared it to, I was leaving college and I'm moving to Florida to learn to wakeboard and become a pro. And people said I was crazy.
Yeah.
Yet I was so clear, and because I made a decision, Kobe, in 3 days after meeting him, invited me to live with him and two other pros, Mike Weddington and Chris Bischoff, live with them to learn to wakeboard and become a pro. Like,
because you knew, you were so clear. Yeah, there was no other option.
This was what was happening. And so I believe that attracted Kobe to invite me. Then, and they became my closest friends in the sport. And that was a journey itself. Yet here I am with Nathan. And because I was looking for leverage asset, and because he had it, and because I did the due diligence and asking the questions, that he had the outcome that I desired, I didn't have control issues with him. I was coachable. I wanted him to be my mentor. I was seeking counsel, guidance, so that I could cut the learning curve, so I could be mentored by the very best, learn from them, learn from their learning curve, which I'm still going to have my own learning curve, but to exponentially crush that learning curve. And so that's exactly what happened. And Nathan invested in me, and there became this equation of trust.
Yeah.
So he would tell me, he asked me what I wanted. I told him what I wanted. We set a goal around that. And he told me, this is the action, this is the roadmap, this is the blueprint for you to achieve this. He told me what to do. I did it.
Yep.
I got the outcome that he said I would get. So I believed him more.
Yep. And
because I did what he told me to do, he believed me more.
He was willing to invest again because you actually did what he said.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that equation over and over and over and over that lasted 19 years.
Yeah.
Into every area of my life, that ultimately I became a chosen son. As he had 4 daughters, I became one of his 2 chosen sons. And my wife, Christy, fell in love with him in the way that he and his wife, Joyce, showed up in our lives and mentored us, that he became her chosen second father.
Wow. By
by her own words, and loved by our families, and the value in what he brings is, here I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? The Robert Cox's rich dad that got guidance from and a mentor, and then he had his human father, right?
Yeah, his regular father. Yep.
My dad, my mom love Nathan and his wife, right? Because of what he's invested in us, because he became my rich dad.
Yeah.
Right. And teaching me those principles that I was seeking to understand. And so, when you talk about the mentors and listening to your podcast, and last one with the gentleman that created the Puffies, right?
Puff and Drinkware. Yeah.
Incredible, like just guidance. And it is a formula.
Yeah.
And you just apply it over and over and over in every area of your life. It creates the same results.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You know what's really interesting and cool? Both you and my father, he was also going to school. He was also on the track to become a doctor. And similar to you, he was like, you know what? He was an athlete. He realized that his dad was a doctor, my grandfather. He realized that wasn't his path. He didn't want it. He didn't do the same journey that you did, where I think it's very clever and simple but clever to go and talk to people who are living the life that you think you want, to make sure that you want it, so that you, because that's where misery comes from, right? Is like misery comes from if you thought you wanted something, or you got implanted the idea that you wanted something because of your environment. Maybe your parents want that for you. You don't actually want it, right? Or it sounds good because you think that you're going to help people and you're going to get a good income. But when you actually look at the lifestyle, it doesn't line up with what you want. Well, where you get in trouble is you keep going down that path anyways. You don't have vision for it, and now you're in trouble. Well, my dad, very similar to you, wild, and two men that I really look up to. He had a similar experience. Everyone wanted him to be a doctor, and he was going to school to become a doctor, and he decided the same thing. And he was like, you know what, actually, kind of crazy, because before you became a professional wakeboarder, had you wakeboarded? You were like, probably, how old were you? Like 20?
I was 20, 21.
So you and him are similar. So he at 19 years old, he was a runner. Were you a runner? What were you? What?
Pole vault.
You're pole vault. So you're a track athlete, both track athletes. You decided to go wakeboarding. He decided to become a professional golfer, and people thought he was nuts. Same like you, thought he was nuts. He was going to give up. His dad didn't talk to him for over a year because he wanted him to become a doctor. And my dad's like, no, I don't want to do it. What a wild experience to then have two men who go after their dream, and then they don't stop. To build big things, the amount of obsession it takes, similar to you, I guarantee you, because it didn't feel like work and you were so passionate, you took no days off on wakeboarding, especially when you're picking up to get the 10,000 hours to master the skill. You were just hitting it, reps. He did the same thing where people thought he was nuts, but in 4 years, he took no days off. I think he took 2 days off after his first 2 years, no days off. Next 2, I think he took Christmas off to hang out with the family, right? But the massive amount of crazy obsession, especially to prove, not even from what I understand, it's not even to prove everyone else wrong, it's to prove yourself right. From when I see him, he's just crazy competitor, and it seems like you're the same. You guys have the same energy in that, and it's really cool that you were able to catch that, not go do what everyone else wanted you to do, but follow what was coming out of your hearts, and then being able to stack that more and more. So if anyone's listening to this and maybe you're getting pressured on doing something that you don't really want to do exactly what Charley said. Go talk to people who are living what your life will look like in 15 years. Go talk to those people and make your own decisions, right, on what that looks like. That's a crazy bridge there of two men I really, really look up to. Charley, somebody that's listening to this and they're like, hey, I love it. Charley's giving me so much actionable stuff, but I don't know if I can have that. I can't align with that same energy. Or he said, go find the best people in the room. How do I open a door up to find those people? Any advice for that?
Absolutely. And I'd love to touch base on what you just said to segue, because it is my experience, Dirk, what you described, that it is human nature for us to impress our values on our children. And for us to impress our values on other people. Another incredible mentor in my life, a man by the name of Dr. John D. Martini. He's a human behavior specialist, world renowned. And I've been working with John for about 15 years. He is a master and teaches axiology, which is the study of values and the hierarchy of values. So each of us have a value hierarchy that is changing, but is established based on the voids that we perceive that we have, that we seek to fill. Very commonly like love languages. If you've ever read the 5 love languages, our love languages are our primary love languages determined by what we perceive to be missing the most in our childhood, that we then seek to fill the rest of our life. And then the second one is the one that we perceive to be less, not as absent as the other, but more absent than the other 3 remaining. So when you look at that and that's all perception, right? It doesn't mean it's actually true. It's just the way that we see it that determines our voids. We then seek to fill these voids. That becomes our hierarchy of our values. So what we perceive to be most missing is our highest value. Yep. We then primarily will impress our values on other people, although our values is like a fingerprint. So my hierarchy of values, because the world is in balance, quantum physics is proven that the world is always in balance. And that means that if this is my hierarchy of values, you have other people that their hierarchy of values, another person is going to be the exact opposite hierarchy of values to mine. And there's no two other people that have the same exact hierarchy. So that means that my value structure, I very likely am already impressing upon my kids, yet it is not going to be their value structure. So we, by design or by human nature, go out into the world pursuing career paths that are impressed upon us by other people. If we ignore that inner voice that you mentioned to earlier, that gets quieter and quieter and quieter over time because we ignore it. I believe it's there for all of us.
Yeah, I agree.
But whether or not we're paying attention to it is different, and tuning into it. So I believe that the best thing for a person to do is to know what their hierarchy of values is. Theirs, not other people's. And if they seek a career path that will fill their hierarchy of values, then they will live an inspired life. And if they follow someone else's value structure, like commonly parents do, like your father going to pursue a doctor because his dad wanted him to, and everybody else thought that would be good for him. Or when I left being a doctor, my mom cried.
Yep.
She just wanted me to finish school and then go wakeboard.
Yeah.
I had no vision for finishing school, right? It was not in my value structure. And I finished early.
Yeah.
Okay. After 3 years. So our values, our hierarchy of values is demonstrated in what we talk about, what we spend money on, what gets our energy, what gives our time, what we think about, what we visualize, what we set goals around, what we study, okay, what we make excuses to do. You can look at the opposite and see what's low values is what we procrastinate, what we say we'll do, we don't do, what we don't have energy for, what we lack a vision for, what we say I can't, I won't, I don't see it happening. All that means it's low value. So those that are listening, I encourage you to pay attention to your values. There's an assessment you can go and do on drjohndemartini.com. You can get your hierarchy of values and then choose to set goals and choose to do things that are going to be aligned, that are aligned with your hierarchy of values. Now, as you fill those voids, then a new hierarchy will surface of those values.
Yeah.
And if you're always living in alignment with those values, you're going to live not only an inspired life, but you're going to make difference. You're going to have an endless amount of energy and adrenaline and focus and attention. Okay. You will stick out. You will be bright and shiny. You will be different than the crowd. Okay. As written by, have you ever heard about Red Shirt, by, I believe it was, Andrew Carnegie, that talks about the red shirt, right? Yeah. And he was being interviewed and asked by the reporter, are you able to predict success? Are you able to identify people and see success? And he said, yes. And he said, really? Well, how? He walked him over to a window that overlooked, the I believe it was iron or steel manufacturing. And he said, what do you see down there? And he said, I see, 100, 150, whatever the number was, men in blue shirts. And he said, yeah. The one that's in red is the one that's going to get my attention, the one that sticks out, the one that's different than the rest. And that will usually be aligned with a person operating in their highest values, not someone else's. When we operate in someone else's highest values, it leads to addiction, because when we're operating on someone else's values, we need immediate gratification. We will only do it if it's pleasurable. Yeah, when you have vision for something like you do with Momentasize and these podcasts and what you're doing with real estate and the pivot that you've done since the last time I saw you, Dirk, right? There, you have vision for this. You make excuses to do it, right? Addiction is nowhere in the equation because this takes every ounce of your energy and your focus that you give it, and you have energy, an endless resource to it, to fulfill it, because you're operating in your highest values, not your father's, right? And so that's my advice to if you're operating in that area and you then do the same thing with your kids, what are their highest values? You want them to go to school, connect how school, how studying, how getting good grades is going to serve their highest value. Connect those dots. Support your spouse what's their highest value. Show them how what you're doing will serve their highest values, and they will push you out the door to go do it. They will say, they will encourage you. They will champion you. They will get you. They will be more fuel for the fire if they see how what you want to do that's aligned with your highest value, how it serves them and their highest value.
And it'll ever change, like you said, as those values are met, then it'll continue to change. Right?
Yeah, so you need to be aware of them. We do our values assessment about every 3 to 4 months.
You'll go through and do the same assessment just to see where things are at.
And it's constantly changing. Yeah. I mean, that's where you asked me what I'm doing currently, and I'm back in after 7 years of focusing on my family, because my highest value with the birthing those kids, it changed.
Yeah.
I mean, I was blessed with my business back in 2016 and made the decision that I was going to pursue my acting career. And so we were in Nashville, Tennessee at the time. Because of that intention, I met a famous Hollywood trainer named Eric Fleshman, ETT, Eric the Trainer, introduced by Gail Kim, who's a Hall of Fame professional wrestler, and her husband, Chef Robert Irvine, which is a famous chef and incredible businessman. They introduced me to Eric the Trainer. He then invited me out to Hollywood, invited us, my wife and I, and Charlie Rose, who was 6 months old, to move out to Burbank, to live in that area, to pursue my acting career and immerse me in the scene in a private Hollywood gym filled with rock stars, movie stars, TV stars, and Dancing with the Stars. Okay. Yeah. Literally. And so I go out there as a civilian.
Yeah.
But the
Trying
same
to make
thing.
It happen, yeah.
Go out there. I made a decision that I'm gonna be an actor. I'm gonna be a successful actor. Same formula, same exact formula. Made a decision to attract people that invested in me. Everything that happened following that was exactly as it happened in the other career paths. And I found myself in the first 6 months, after a year of study and a year of focus in acting discipline and being and working my way through that development, I find myself getting 5 movies in 6 months. At the same time, we get pregnant with the quadruplets. And it's crazy. A text exchange with one of my buddies here that recently he's on SEAL team, on the CBS SEAL team, AJ Buckley, and AJ and I are training in the gym at that time, and he's just being picked up for SEAL team. And he comes to train, and he says, Charlie, I've got something super top secret. And so no telling me, but I got to tell you.
Yeah.
He goes, we're pregnant. And this is their second pregnancy. We're pregnant with twins. And I'm, oh my gosh, AJ, that's incredible. That is incredible. I'm not trying to one up you at all. But we're pregnant too, and no one knows yet. We're pregnant with quadruplets, right? Exactly. And so this is our relationship. One of the most incredible workout partners. So good.
You got him.
It was just like crazy timing. We're both pregnant with quadruplets. But he's launching a podcast, actually, in the whole thing today, today launching it. But the scene that I was in, and these investment of my friends like AJ and others that just, I didn't even do an audition. Like, they just kept sending me to these jobs that led to another job. That you said something earlier, said they taught me, this aligned with what you said earlier, is that it's not about this movie. This movie's leading you to the next movie.
Yep.
Someone you're going to meet in this movie is going to lead you to the next movie. And that's what happened. An actor, a producer, a director said they liked what I did. And they said, hey, I've got this other project. I think that if you're open to it, I'd love to show it to you, that I ended up going to. I'm saying this because when the kids were born and I had this success and it was leading me to all these other projects, I watched a movie called Goodbye, Christopher Robin, which is the story of the author of Winnie the Pooh and his dysfunctional relationship with his son, nicknamed Christopher Robin. A great movie, Margot Robbie in it as well. I watched it when I took my daughter, Sunny Sue, a couple months old, on a trip to Utah with me. Watched it on the plane, watched that second half on the plane home, got home, and I asked my wife, I said, Christy, would you watch a movie with me that has had some really big impact on me, and I believe it's life changing. And of course she said yes. we watched the movie and we're both in tears. And she said, well, what do you think? And I said, we have to leave. We have to leave Hollywood. We have to leave, and we have to remove ourselves from this equation, because if we stay here, I won't raise my kids. I'll be on set all the time. We have to leave because my values changed. My hierarchy of values went from where it was business and then acting, and now I have 5 children, right? I went from 1 child to 5 children in 5 months. And so my values shifted.
Yeah.
And thus that focus redirect my entire life. I mean, I had told people, I'm going to be a successful actor. You're going to see me on billboards. And then my life changed. Yeah. And so the last 7 years have been focused, because of those values being on my family, have been focused on my family. Thankfully, because I had a leveraged asset that I could make that choice to be able to do it. I didn't have to worry about my income. I could focus on my family. And in fact, my income went up during that time dramatically. And now kids are in school. Kids are in the 3rd day of 1st grade, the quadruplets, and Charley is in her 3rd day of 4th grade. I have all this time, right, available to me. My values have changed again. Yeah. And I'm back to business. And Christy is, her values shift as well. So it's ever changing, but you're paying attention to it and making sure you align with your partners. I believe that not only are you more fulfilled and you get what you want, yet one of the areas that in working with people, which I work with people to help them create a leveraged asset. That's what my inspiration is today, helping other people create a life of choice like I have been able to create. That support from a spouse is not common, especially if I'm working with a woman and they become uber successful, and a man can be very often experience this where a man feels threatened or challenged that their wife is making more than them. Yeah. And so there's with that and how that the woman can align with their husband's values. So they get support. So they support their husband and they get supported. Have this new girl that I've been working with, her husband is onboarding to professional baseball, and she wants support in developing her business. And so I asked her, like, how supportive are you for your husband's baseball career? Which she wasn't that supportive. And so I said, imagine you show him support and you see how his success over here is going to serve your business development. He is more likely to be open and see how your business development is going to help his professional career, right? And so that area is just, I believe it's a void out there in the world that needs coaching, that needs guidance for people on how they can support and really prosper in a marriage and in a relationship, thus also doing so with their kids and by example.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. You are dropping some bombs on us today. That you made me think of a quote that we're all just one relationship away from changing our entire life, which also aligns with Grant Cardone says, strangers, so somebody you haven't met yet, has everything that you want. The person you have not met yet has everything that you actually want. And so that what I like about that is that forces me, one, it keeps me super curious because I never know who I'm going to be able to meet who's going to change my life. For example, you and I have met and you are already changing my life. And it's very clear to me that I need to continue to build a relationship with you just from the energies that are connecting, the things that I'm learning and the alignment, right? So you never know what'll happen in that way. But also it keeps you curious and excited. And it also keeps you feeling, because I think a lot of people maybe have this. There's probably a couple people who are just naturally good at it, but it also keeps me a little bit uncomfortable because I have to meet the stranger. I have to put myself in situations that don't always make me very comfortable. I have to go out and network. I have to go figure out how to find that person that's the best at what I want and find a way to talk to them, which means usually I'm going to have to talk to this person, this person, this person, this person, genuinely like go to all these different things, and boom, the door will open. So it keeps me curious, and it keeps me a little uncomfortable. And I love that piece of it. You know, it's, you just made me think of those two quotes, and it's super, super exciting. So the values, I love that example. We'll link to the doctor's, I'm forgetting his name right now, but we'll link to his in our notes. We'll link to that, and I'm going to take it myself because it's super, super exciting to be able to have that base. Those have now changed because your kids are in school, and now you're going to focus, from what I'm hearing you say, is focus on two things: growing the business again, which in turn is going to help also find people and be able to work with them and educate them as they build their business. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And I love what I've found is my identity that is translated, you know, through everything that I've done, is that I love coaching. Yeah. I love investing. And I truly believe in the human potential. When I was wakeboarding, my professional career was extended because I had a wakeboard portion of a school with a professional water skier named Jennifer Leachman, and O-Town Water Sports. And I fell in love with coaching and teaching a person to go from a beginner to a pro. Yeah. And I took several, count on two hands how many I took from learning to become pros. And then everyone in between that became amateurs and supported the sport. And I found that gave me great inspiration. That then I created a mobile marketing business called Mission to Ride within the sport of wakeboarding, that I toured around in tour buses with athletes, myself being one of them, and did clinics and demonstrations with local retailers while following the pro tour and competing. And that investment in the future of the sport, which is youth, right? The future of anything is youth. Mm-hmm. That I found that it fueled my career, not only my own athletic career, because it was giving me reason to ride every day in front of fans or people learning to wakeboard, and also that it got me more exposure. So it was this great investment in the sport, create a bigger pie. I'm a person that's very competitive with myself. I'm not competitive necessarily with others. I'm inspired, like hearing your success from Taylor when we're up there skiing, and he's giving me coaching on skiing, which took me from like a 3 to an 11.
He's fast. Isn't he fast?
Incredible. I love skiing with Taylor. Yeah. Like I learned, just one simple thing changed my skiing dramatically. And I love that at 51 years old, I'm skiing better than I've ever skied in my life. Yeah. I am ripping. Yeah. And I know next season, getting more coaching from Taylor and Brad Jacobson, I'm going to ski even better. Yet when I look at all of that, it's this, as you said, I'm one person, I'm one stranger away. And I'm reminded by all of the signs that I've been given in my life, the evidence that I'm on the right path. And I believe that in two ways that people get misdirected by the perspective they choose with these signs. That if you look at the law of sacrifice, that if I have this here, this is where I am today, and I want to be here, right? I've gone through this much resistance and adversity to be here. They're always equal. If I want to go to here, I have to go through this. And so, I want something better, yet most people are like, I don't want to go through this. And to be honest, I don't either, right? I don't, you saw vision with your career, you saw vision with this podcast, with your pivot and change into real estate, Dirk, right? You wanted this, you didn't even know what was going to happen here. Yet as it starts to happen and you run into these obstacles and these challenges, people choose out because they choose this perspective and they give it meaning that it's in the way. When I believe it's exactly what was meant to happen for us to learn and grow as an individual. Like the last podcast you did with Mr. Puffy, I apologize, remember your name, and I'm going to meet him for sure now.
Tyrone,
Tyrone, is that that, he said every mistake, there were lessons. Everything that happened with my, with this project and this project led me to the success of Puffy. And now I'm able to consult other people. I mentioned Tim Baggs before, like his success he's having now is from all of those failures they had before. So it's choosing to see those obstacles and the resistance as necessary that to get this, I got to go through this. And then also the signs that are being given that we are on path by the people, as you said, the strangers that show up in our life. So I said at the beginning, I set a goal to meet my wife in 90 days, which was after a 3-year journey of sobriety, celibacy, and a very clear blueprint and roadmap to meet my wife, which I actually just released telling this story on my Instagram yesterday. But I meet my wife on an airplane. Which it was 8 to 12 hours after I accepted the goal to meet her in 24 hours. Knew her, she was my wife right away. She knew I was her husband right away. Yeah. Didn't tell her that she was a goal. Yeah. I was smart enough not to tell her that. Not yet then. And so we go on our first date, which she canceled that night that we walked off the plane. She went to wrestling. I went to some business meetings. And that night we were supposed to have a date. And she cancels on me after shooting TV at like 9:30, 10 o'clock. And this is my wife, Dirk.
Yeah.
Right? I know that I know. This is my wife. She's everything on the list. So finally, she says, okay, hey, if you can be here in 10 minutes, I'll, go with you. So, and we went to my house that I was building in Orlando. My dream house on a Lake Holden overlooking downtown Orlando. Incredible view. I'm celibate. There's no sexual energy there. I'm sober. So I'm safe. Yeah. Right. And I've already told her on the plane that when we met, I said, listen, the woman that I'm with romantically next will be my wife when she's my wife. Okay. Which is major pattern interrupt there for her in that scene. And that really was like, whoa, this guy's different. So it was safe to go out with me, is my point. Well, she goes out with me and says, hey, just so you know, it was my girlfriends that pushed me to not cancel on you.
To not cancel on you.
To not cancel.
That's good.
They were like, we've never seen you like this. Mm-hmm. You have to go. Yeah. And she said, we'll meet next time when I'm back for TV next month, because she shot at Universal in Orlando. And I'm like, I'm on a world tour next month. Like I'm in the Philippines, Hungary, whatever. Like this is in 2008. And I said, I'm not here next month. So we got to go out. We got to go out. No, and I know I'm focused. I've like very clear vision. I'm decided. Yeah. Okay. So we have this date. I take her back. She flies out. She has to go shoot somewhere else. I'm in the gym the next morning. I'm in 24-hour fitness, Orlando, Florida, over by Universal Studios. And there are all of these aliens, okay? I mean, people that do not look like from this planet. They're 7 feet tall. They're 6'10". They're ginormous and they don't fit in, right? And I'm going, what is going on here? So I went up to one of them and I said, excuse me, like, I've never seen you guys here before. This is my, regular gym. What do you do? Why are you here? And they go, oh, we're professional wrestlers and we're shooting TV. And so we're just getting our pump on. And I'm like, oh, okay. I don't mention that I went out with Christy Hemme the night before, right? Because maybe she had a boyfriend she didn't tell me about. And this guy's like squash me. Yeah. Boom, done, over, game over. And so I don't say, I go, okay. But I see this girl in the distance. And she's Korean. She's got one arm down on the bench and she's doing a tripod position, doing lat pulls, like headphones on, very touch and very fit, very focused. And so I walk over because I'm thinking she's a professional wrestler, most likely safer. I mean, if she is a wrestler, she could definitely crush me. Yet if I'm gonna do my best to not make her angry. And I go, excuse me, and she was like, yes, no, didn't look at me at all, right? Because I'm the annoying guy at the gym now, right?
Yeah, you're chatting to everybody. They just want to work out,
right? Yeah. And she goes, I go, hi. She goes, yeah, and she's doing lap pulls, and I go, are you a professional wrestler? And she goes, yes. Now, annoyance level is going up, right? Can you just let me work out? Yeah. And I go, oh, that's interesting. I'm kind of talking to myself, right? Even though I'm talking to her because it's not looking at me. I go, oh yeah, I met a professional wrestler yesterday. And she goes, oh yeah, where? And I go, on a plane. And she stands up and she looks at me. And which now the energy is like, I'm like a little bit like, whoa. She goes, are you? And I go, Charley? And she runs off. And now I'm just like looking around, just going, okay, now I'm gonna, like, now what's gonna happen? Like, is she bringing the army over? And she runs over with this other girl. And she goes, this is him. This is him. We're Christy's best friends. We're the ones that made her go on the date with you. And I'm just like, it's emotional for me because I immediately was like, this is God's hand on me saying, pay attention, slap me in the face. Don't screw this up. Like, this is your future. That woman I mentioned earlier, her name is Gail Kim. Not only is she my wife's best friend, she's a godmother of my 2 daughters. Now, like not knowing that stranger, that she changed my life forever by encouraging Christy to go on that date with me. And then now is a significant part of my life that my wife talks to her probably 10 times a day, right? And they work together. And it's like, so yeah, you're one stranger, you're one decision away from every single thing that you have ever desired in your life and more. And it's a bridge into the conversation I had last night with my daughter, Charlie Rose and Rocket, 2 separate conversations at bedtime because they're meeting new friends at school. And I asked them, I met a new friend. And I'm just like asking them like, the journey for them and how nervous they get and teaching them what to do with those nerves as they walk into a room of unknown people, as they walk into a group, as they walk into a party, they walk into a business meeting. Because Dirk, I was a very shy kid and I still have shy, insecure, nervous moments. And I don't know where I learned it or who taught it to me, yet I was told or figured out that is immediately when I walked into an unknown space, an unknown group, that the moment that I put my hand out, looked someone in the eye and said, hi, I'm Charlie, what's your name? That negative, nervous energy was gone. And it did the same for everyone around me. So if I walked into a circle of 10 people, I'd be the first one to say, hi, I'm Charlie, and shake someone's hand. And then everyone loosened up and things changed and the energy shifted. And that took me from being the shy guy at the wall of my fraternity, watching everybody else get the girls, to going, man, I gotta change this. Like, this does not feel good. To then, people seeing me as an outgoing or extrovert person when by nature I'm not.
Yeah. But you can control it. You can choose to make it happen. And I totally agree with you in the fact that it's the showing up with the energy, even though you're, like you said, internally, it maybe feels a little bit uncomfortable. It's once you're in motion and you show up with the positive energy and you just get it going. It's really funny. The first thing I ever said to my wife too, I was super nervous. I saw her and I was looking at her and I was like, holy, who is that? Like by pure chance. And similar to you, when I met her, that's what I now looking back would call love at first sight. I had this feeling. I was like, that same night I asked her, like, I said to her, I missed you so much. And tell me everything that's been happening. Those 2 things. But I remember being so nervous. I'm like negotiating in my head. There's a Dutch saying it goes, nee heb je altijd, maar ja kan je krijgen. It means like there's already a no, so you might as well ask for a yes. So I'm like out negotiating. Finally, I get the nerves to go up, and I'm like, in my head, I was negotiating like, what am I gonna say? Like, what do I even say to her? And I finally get the nerves. I start walking over there, and the simple thing, exactly like you said, just all I said to start the whole party, what has changed my life forever, similar to you, all I said was, hey, I'm Dirk. What's your name? And that exact thing started a motion of now we have 2 children, built a life beyond my wildest dreams. And so, I love that story. And I think that's really cool that you're now encouraging your children to do the same thing. Because it does just start with a simple, hey, my name's Dirk. What's yours? And you never know where it'll go.
Last night at bedtime, when I was talking with Rocket, he had this big question that he wanted to have with my wife. Something that she and I have been discussing, that she felt that he was telling me one thing and telling her one thing because she believed that he thought that that's what I wanted to hear. And last night he said, hey, I really want to talk to Mom about that situation. And I said, well, I can sense that you're scared or you're nervous about it. And he said, I am. And he's 6 years old, right? And he's a really outgoing kid. So I said, well, what are you nervous about? He goes, I'm afraid she's going to tell me no. And I laughed. And I was like, buddy, she tells you no all day long.
Nothing to worry about.
Like, you're nervous about her saying no? Dude, I listened to her say no. And you're asking all of these things. And we're like, no, that's not safe. No, don't do that. That's not okay. No, we're going to school. No, right? And I'm like, dude. And this big smile came across his face and he laughed. And I know our listeners, many of the listeners have an adversity to hearing no, or have chosen different paths in their life because I don't believe that they saw that they could overcome hearing no, right? Like when we're talking about going to pursue wakeboarding and your dad pursuing golf, that people told us no. People told us no.
Don't do it. Yeah.
People told us not to do it. People called us crazy. Yeah. And that is when you're aligned with your highest values, again, back to it, just, you don't accept it. Like, it's just not, it doesn't matter. Oh, they just don't have vision for it. And it's just like water off a duck's back. Yet we're being told no all the time anyways. Yeah. Like, just move, move forward.
Yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful story. I love it. Charley, thanks for coming on. It's been a wild journey. I've really, really enjoyed it. You definitely have me thinking about a bunch of different things, and I just really appreciate you taking the time to come on, to share your knowledge, to get connected with us. For anybody that's interested in following along, where can people get connected with you, Charley?
Instagram is definitely the easiest and best. Please shoot me a message. It's at Charley Patterson. Charley is with an EY, and I'm sure you'll put it in this. But yeah, just reach out. I love investing in people. I'm commonly referred to as a rocket launcher, because I love just investing in people and launching them towards what their goals and their dreams are. And I get such great joy and satisfaction from that. So yeah, reach out, stay in touch. We'd love to hear from your listeners, and love to know how I can assist in any way.
No, we appreciate it. We're definitely going to have you back on soon. Thanks for coming on. And with that, guys, we will see you on the next one.